Welcome to the Norfolk Southern's Dayton District Part 2 program. The first run-by features a colorful and vibrant SD60E commemorative locomotive, honoring and paying tribute to first responders for fire, police, and emergency services. This video will cover a 16-mile segment of the Dayton District between control points 198 and 182. Our location is CP 190 near Enon, Ohio, and marks the west end of the 10,000-foot-long passing siding. The passing siding consists of right-of-way left over from the Marion, Ohio to Dayton, Ohio Erie Railroad branch. NS train symbol number 170 is slowly entering the passing siding. NS 170 runs between Chattanooga, Tennessee and Conway Yard near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The third locomotive in this lash-up is number 7246 and is an SD90 Mac. It was purchased from the Union Pacific and was rebuilt in December of 2016. NS train number 116 is a Chattanooga, Tennessee to Bellevue, Ohio train, and it takes the siding at Enon. The rail fan in the lower left of your screen is still using a VHS camcorder. He claims he has over 1,000 VHS railroad tapes in his collection. NS train number 288 takes a siding at Enon. NS 288, an automotive train, runs between Atlanta, Georgia and Detroit, Oakwood, Michigan. NS train 40A, a grain train with a Union Pacific engine on the point, has been holding the main and waits for the automotive train to clear the siding switch. Notice the New York Central style triangular signals. That is about to change with the advent of positive train control and traffic light style signals coming online. NS train number 376 heads east. 376 runs between Louisville, Kentucky and Bellevue, Ohio. An NS Heritage Unit painted in the Virginian colors leads this train. Notice the new traffic light signals are already in place at this location. From this aerial view, you can see the Erie Railroad, which is to the right of the track the train is running on. The brush and vegetation have been cleared to give motorists at this location a safer view of trains approaching the crossing. NS Train 376 has pulled into the passing siding at Enon and stops just short of the Snyderville crossing. It will wait for the westbound NS 117 to clear the main. NS 117 is a Bellevue, Ohio to Chattanooga, Tennessee train. NS 116 starts up at Snyderville and heads east. NS 116 was abolished later in the year after this video was taken. The west end of the Enon passing siding configuration is shown here. The control point at this location is CP 190. NS 178 heads east and is at Birmingham, Alabama to Bellevue, Ohio manifest. NS 304 rolls out of the passing siding at Enon and heads west. This train left Bellevue Yard and will wind up at Sharon Yard, just north of Cincinnati. Normally, NS eastbound trains have an even number train symbol, and westbounds have an odd number symbol. further east to Springfield, Ohio, NS train number 169 heads west at CP 182. NS 169 is a manifest that originates at Conway Yard near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and runs to Birmingham, Alabama. All the road crossings in Springfield are considered to be quiet zones. Locomotive horn blowing is not permitted. NS 170 is the counterpart to NS 169 and runs the reverse from Birmingham to Conway. Collier Publishing Company, which has been closed for decades in Springfield, is being razed with a wrecking ball. At one time, huge rolls of paper were delivered to this facility by the Springfield Suburban Railway Company. The beautiful building in the background with the tall steeples at each end is the home of the Clark County Historical Society and Heritage Museum. This aerial view was taken with a remote-controlled drone in the year 2015. The drone was flying at approximately 25 feet to gather this footage. Since that time, with the proliferation of drones, the FAA has clamped down on locations where you can operate a drone legally. This location has been designated by the FAA as a no-fly zone due to its proximity of the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. As a result, we can no longer fly our drone here or within 5 miles of the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This same rule now applies to flying a drone within 5 miles of any commercial airport or military base, unless permission is obtained from the airport operator or control tower. We see a signal change at CP 193, indicating that an eastbound is approaching. The Norfolk Southern Office Car Special is returning to its home base in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Our camera is set up on the X Erie right-of-way as NS 117 heads west. NS 376 is slowing down to move into the siding 3 miles further east. Again, we witness the NS office car special. This time, the special train is heading to Louisville for the Kentucky Derby, which is held every May. The train is just passing the site of the ex-New York Central Cold Springs Tower at CP 188. Three railroads, including the New York Central, the Peoria and Eastern, and Erie, all converged at this location at one time. A 146-year tradition came to an end on May 21st of 2017. Due to weakening attendance and high operating costs, the Ringling Brothers Barnum & Bailey Circus decided to call it quits. When the circus was under pressure to quit using elephants caused by the animal rights group PETA, attendance of the circus dropped even more. The date of this run-by was September 22nd of 2015. NS 26C originated in Cincinnati, and its destination was the Rickenbacker, Ohio facility in Columbus. NS 117 is led by the Union Pacific Olympic Torch Relay commemorative locomotive, and it heads west through Fairborn, Ohio. NS L12 is a local, returning from Springfield, Ohio, to Reed Yard in Middletown, Ohio. L12 only operates on Mondays and Thursdays. NS 305 heads east at Eden, Ohio. NS 305 runs from Sharon Yard in Cincinnati to Bellevue, Ohio. Bros Circus Train has just left Cincinnati and is heading to its next show in Norfolk, Virginia. The date is March 20th of 2017. This marks the last time we'll see the circus train in our area. This scene depicts the red train and is called the Circus Extreme. The red train is identified by the red globe decals on each car. Its counterpart is the blue train, with blue globe decals on each car, and is called Out of This World. The red train's last performance was at Providence, Rhode Island on May 7th of 2017. The blue train's last performance was at Uniondale, New York on May 21st of 2017. After this date, the trains returned to their home base in Florida. Each train typically had 60 cars, 36 passenger cars, 4 stock cars, and 20 freight cars. The length of each train was almost a mile. Upon return to Florida, the cars were either auctioned off or sold to scrappers. NS-117 pulls out of the siding at Enon. The new traffic light signals have been installed here, but are not cut in and functional. The NYC signals are on their last months of service. The NS office car special left Altoona, Pennsylvania at 8 a.m. this morning. 15 hours later, the train passes through Fairborn on its way south to Augusta, Georgia for the Masters Golf Tournament. The date is March 28, 2017. This is something you won't see every day. The NS Wabash Heritage Locomotive passes south through Hackery, Ohio, with a grain train that left the grain elevator at Uniopolis, Ohio, earlier in the day. The reason this is so rare is the track it's running on is former Detroit, Toledo, and Ironton rails. The second unit on this train is the Indiana and Ohio SD40T-2. This tunnel motor was built for the Southern Pacific in December of 1978. A locomotive swap will take place further down the track at the Maitland Y in Springfield. The Wabash and Indiana and Ohio locomotives will trade places. The SD40T-2 will then lead the consist on former Erie trackage to the Norfolk Southern Enon passing siding. There, the I&O engine will uncouple from the Wabash and head back to Springfield. Later, some NS light engines will arrive and hook onto the Wabash locomotive and grain cars and head west on the NS Dayton district. A westbound automotive train slices through the cut behind the Masonic home in Springfield. The conductor of this train was calling out signals and identified his train as NS 180. Looking this symbol up on one of our NS train symbol lists, NS 180 is a Columbus, Ohio to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania train which terminates in Conway Yard. Since our video of this train is west of Columbus, we're not quite sure what was going on with this train. A grain train is waiting on the passing siding at Enon for a new crew to take it west. NS 169 approaches. NS-169 is actually a combination of two trains. 169 originates in Conway Yard near Pittsburgh, and its destination is Birmingham, Alabama. When NS-169 reaches Columbus, it will lay over and wait for NS-179 that starts out in Bellevue, and will also end up in Birmingham. When NS-179 reaches Columbus, it will tie its power and freight cars onto the rear of NS-169. This move is a cost-cutting measure, as only one crew will take the train the rest of the way to Birmingham. As a result, this monster train will now have two distributive-powered locomotives in the middle of the train. Finally, a light engine arrives from Columbus and will tie onto the parked grain train in the siding. The coupling try failed. The engineer will back up and try again. Maybe one of the coupler knuckles was in the closed position. NS-26Z slows to enter the west end of the Enon passing siding. Capture a detour train that normally uses the Newcastle district. A bridge abutment problem on the Newcastle district forced several trains to detour on the Dayton district. NS-177 is in Elkhart, Indiana to Macon, Georgia manifest. On occasion, a NS train will show up on the Dayton district that normally is not found running in this region. This NS-61Z is a good example. This is a steel slab gondola train that normally runs in the Sharon, Pennsylvania to Fairless, Pennsylvania area. This train is past a derailment site that occurred in the Conrail era in the late 70s. Purple taconite ore pellets were dumped on the ground. In the year 2019, the pellets could still be seen at the derailment site. Also at the same location in October of 2017, two people were videotaping a stunt for the purpose of posting their exploits on YouTube. One person laid on the tracks in front of a fast-approaching NS train. At the last second, that individual rolled off the tracks and avoided being hit by the train. The other individual who was videotaping the event was wearing a backpack that the locomotive hit, and it was ripped off his body. Luckily, neither was hurt in this stupid stunt that could have had serious results.
After stopping at CP 198, you have permission to stop indication at restricted speed in a west direction there, 179. Oh.
Okay, I understand 179 has permission by the stop signal. 198 in a west direction, restricted speed, over.
Correct, over.
All right, thanks, sir.
Welcome out.
pleasant autumn evening, we capture an eastbound train passing the Heritage Center in Springfield. A still photographer was on the other side of the tracks, taking a series of pictures with strobe lights. Notice the tall tower on the opposite side of the tracks. This tower holds antennas involved with PTC, Positive Train Control. Positive Train Control is being implemented across the entire United States on Class 1 railroads. The function of the system is to provide protection of train movements, excess speed, human error, head-on collisions, or track issues ahead, such as an improperly thrown switch. This empty excursion train movement is heading to Springfield, Ohio, to run a rare mileage trip on former Detroit, Toledo, and Ironton track between Lima, Quincy, and St. Paris, Ohio. It is very rare to see CSX power on NS track. But here's another example of the Indiana and Ohio bringing a loaded grain train to the Enon passing siding. The CSX power is uncoupled from the grain train it left in the siding. The power pulls forward through the switch, stops, reverses direction, and heads back to Springfield. Indiana and Ohio crews are responsible for getting these trains to NS for pickup. perform the Excursion over the weekend. The passenger train returns west towards the Lebanon, Ohio area, where the train is based. NS 175 heads west to Cincinnati. NS 175 runs between Bellevue, Ohio, and Macon, Georgia. Thanks for joining us.